Hi, I'm Zala Fashant, and I have brought together today some of our co-authors of the book, Designing Effective Teaching and Significant Learning. We're going to really talk about faculty development, and we're going to talk about professional development in the sense of people who were involved with it on their campuses. And we're going to also take a look at some of their successes, some of the opportunities that they provided for faculty, and we're going to do it in their words and giving you a chance to do that. So first of all, I'm going to start with Karen. Karen, why don't you start by explaining your role in faculty development on your campus?
Hi, I'm Karen LaPlant, and I was a full-time IT faculty. So I taught computer and business classes for almost 30 years at a 2-year technical college in Minnesota called Hennepin Technical College. And I was always interested in professional development because this was kind of my second career. I started out as an accountant. And so I started by joining our professional development committee and then was chair for about 15 years. And that kind of led me to being appointed as the college representative for our Center in Teaching and Learning through the state system.
And Linda?
Yes. Hello, I'm Linda Russell, and I taught at Minneapolis Community and Technical College. And I was involved for a long time in various initiatives, I would say, things that were popular at the time in the 90s, writing across the curriculum, that kind of thing. And early 2000s, I was asked to take a leadership role in creating more faculty development opportunities as part of a state grant. So rather than just focus on the few designated professional development days that we had on the calendar, I was instructed to conduct smaller, frequent presentations, leading teaching circle groups, book groups, and other kinds of activities to support faculty, which led to the creation of a Center for Teaching and Learning on our campus.
And Stewart?
Yes, my name is Stewart Ross. I have a wild story compared to most people. I was director of bands at Minnesota State for many, many years, and then started to have a hearing loss because I was director of bands at Minnesota State. Plus, I played trombone professionally and so on. Well, once I was no longer director of bands, I was looking for something exciting. And at that same time in my life, the university union decided they were going to start a Center for Teaching and Learning. They really didn't have anything. So I applied looking for something exciting, and I won the position, which was half-time at first. And then I was able to get a grant from the state, and that made it a full-time. So that gave me 3 years with the grant. And in time, we developed what we called the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, known as CETL. And I got involved in the state group also, the MNSCU office faculty development. And I was kind of all by myself, but then we started to get money for student workers and staff and other people that could help out. And we had about 600 full-time faculty, 15,000 students and graduate programs at Minnesota State. And I guess we'll tell the story soon.
All right. So let's start with Linda. Why don't you talk about some of the big ideas, some of the things that you did as a CTL leader and the things that you achieved in your faculty development work? Anything that's unique, new, some of the things that were the biggest successes?
I think some of the things that I would consider successes were small things, not giant things that made a difference. So one of those things is that I sent out to all faculty what I called tips of the week. And the idea was to give both what we might call housekeeping tips. You know, it's this time in the semester, you know, have you remembered about this or that? But I also included teaching tips. And it was very short, once a week, every Monday. And what it was a weekly touch point. And it caused a lot of communication where I would get people answering my emails saying, oh, hey, by the way, you know, I have a question about that. Can we talk? So it really flourished into some major part of my regular communication with faculty. Something that was kind of big was that we started a new faculty seminar, and that was for new full-time hires, and that we'd never done anything organized with new hires before, except for an orientation day. So this thing lasted all semester, and it was really well received by the faculty because they felt that they needed the support. I also did mid-course class assessments where I went into classes and got feedback from students for faculty that became quite popular and helpful. And it caused me to be working more as a peer consultant one-on-one. And then I think another big part of it was branching out from the teaching and learning with faculty into some campus initiatives such as the assessment group. And so we did some big assessments across campus as part of accreditation. And so the Center for Teaching and Learning was very involved, and that caused a lot more engagement with faculty.
Stewart, why don't you share some of your successes and program elements at the State University?
Yes, I was fortunate and unfortunate at the same time, I guess. There was no faculty development, which is kind of shocking when you think of a university with 600 faculty. This was in the early 2000s. By then, of course, many universities had centers, quite large centers. So that was an advantage in that nobody had ever done much, although the disadvantage was nobody knew what this meant. And of course, the education department got angry immediately. Who's this guy? He's not from our department. And I found out later in my life that this is a big problem at universities where you have an education department. They don't necessarily deliver this kind of thing to faculty, however. So in any event, it all started with the first day. I said, well, what do we do for new faculty? And everybody looked around and they said, nothing. We give them a book. I said, you're kidding. I said, I've seen that book all over campus. It's still in the plastic. Nobody's ever opened the book, which tells you something about faculty development. So we designed a first day, a full day of activities where faculty would come in and talk about what they do, some of our better faculty. And we had the provost there, and we did all sorts of things that were quite exciting. And we took them to lunch, and we took them on a bus around campus, which they thought was, many of them had no idea what the city was all about and so on. And that was huge. We built upon that after the first year and made it into even a bigger success in following years. But it got all the new faculty together. Now you may say that's not much. Well, we have 600 faculty at that university. And at that time, we were getting as many as 60 to 70 new faculty every year. That's a huge amount of people that you could influence and change the way they might approach teaching at your university. So we quickly moved off of that and said, well, what if we had them work all year on teaching and learning all year, call it a certificate program. And then at the end of the year, if they come to everything and do the work, they get a certificate and they can show that to their dean. And if you know anything about higher education, everybody's looking for a way to get approval and to get to move on to higher levels of assistant associate. And we got the deans, we invited them to a seminar, and we talked about why we're doing it. And of course, the deans were encouraging their new faculty to take this certificate program. So I'll never forget the second year, I came in with this sheet to sign up for this certificate program that we were developing. They didn't even know what it was at that point. And at the end of the day, I went back to my office and I pulled out all the coupons, and I had 63 faculty that wanted to be in a program that we don't even have yet. And that told me that there was excitement about faculty development. Most of the faculty I had talked to previously that were a long time, oh, nobody cares about faculty development at our university. Well, of course not. There wasn't any. So that's what that was the default. So that was a huge, huge chunk. And every year for the 10 years I was in the center as director, we had big numbers because those people had such a good success rate. They were enjoying teaching. They would tell people the next year to take the certificate program. And we kept getting more and more new faculty to be in the program. And it didn't take long before we had 150 faculty that had been through our program that were changed for life. And then we had faculty that were retiring that were not interested. And soon half of the faculty had been through that program. So you can see how that changed everything. Of course, the provost got excited, gave us more monies to work with. And then we developed other programs that maybe we'll have time to discuss yet.
All right. And Karen, working in a technical college, you had both general education programs you also have the technical career and technical education program. So what kinds of things did you do at a technical college, purely technical college?
Well, when I first joined our professional development committee, I found out that it was professional development committee for all employees. And we had no budget. But the administration wanted us to put on events and we had no budget. So we had to go and plead. And the only way they'd give us any money is if we also had some sessions or some topics that would help the clerical people, the admin people, you know, people that weren't faculty. So it got to be very tricky. And I'd say, well, can we have some just for faculty? You know, and they'd say no, because in Minnesota, the union negotiated professional development, and each faculty member, full-time equivalent faculty member, got a certain amount. It was like $250, $275 a year. Not enough to really go anywhere that wasn't real local and real short. So nobody ever used it. So we decided to, why don't we, as a group, decide to bundle this together and have faculty request what they want to go to, and then we could give them up to $2,000 or $2,500. So they could attend perhaps a national conference. The problem with that is people would go, but they wouldn't come back and not tell anybody about it. So the word didn't get around what they were learning. So we implemented something that if they came and it was approved, they would go, that they had to write like a 1-paragraph summary, and we published it in our professional development newsletter. We kept their names, and as the topics appeared, we'd have what we called brown bag lunches or lunch and learns, because we had no money. So people could bring their lunch to a room between the lunch hour, and perhaps a person that had gone to an assessment national conference would talk about what they learned, what they found out, or somebody that went on sabbatical would come and talk about their sabbatical, things that before had never been done. It opened the communication lines to what it could be used for. Okay, now this was all faculty part. Like I said, anything that wasn't faculty, we had to do in the college workshop days where there was a budget. We weren't in charge of it, but we could plan it. And then we planned things for, you know, the whole college as a role. But the faculty had often just because the union gives money, even though nobody realized that faculty weren't using it, because where can you go for less than $300? You know, you have to be able to drive there. So it had to be local and close and in your, you know, in your area or your discipline. We also exposed people to not just going to conferences or courses that were in their discipline, but things that made them a better teacher. And this was something new. Everybody thought that they couldn't get approval unless it was just in their discipline. So like I was in IT, so I went to a lot of things that weren't just IT, things on, you know, course design, developing effective teachers, you know, things that would really benefit you. So I think we opened up the eyes, spread the word through our newsletter, and got more and more faculty involved. Those were just some of the ways that we did it. Towards the end, we got some money from the state to develop a Center for Teaching and Learning on our campus. And that funding went on for, I don't know, less than 10 years. When the funding went away, the center went away. It was back to just being a professional development committee. So we could not get the school to support just having a center for teaching excellence, which, you know, that's why everybody's there. But we made it work with a dedicated group of volunteers. We didn't get release time. We didn't get anything. All we got was the passion to share and create better teachers of ourselves and anybody that we could talk into come into a group. You know, somebody may bring cookies that they made at home just to entice people, say, you know, come and we'll talk about this, and have some cookies during break. And we got people interested in Quality Matters, and we set up people and paid for their training, and then set up mentors at our college to help other people that wanted to go through it. So it was a small, I would call it more grassroots, not a lot of investment or even a lot of encouragement from the college, but from faculty, there was good buy-in.
And speaking of that, I think I'm going to ask each one of you if you talk a little bit about, I know one of the problems that faculty developers and people who work in professional development always mention is, how do you build interest? How do you get people to come to your sessions, and what kinds of things do you do to get them there? So why don't we start with Linda on that one and tell us what you think?
Well, I can tell you what didn't work.
Okay.
My administration told me that I should be offering these presentations every week during something they experimented with called College Hour, where there were no classes at noon on some day. And what happened was everybody just stayed in their offices and graded papers or something. And I would spend a lot of time working on presentations, and then I would get 2 people. So that doesn't work very well. What did work for me were those teaching tips, because it was a once a week touch point. Like I said, we did a number of smaller 2-question faculty surveys that about something specific. And then actually we tried to respond to them. I was the one who was leading, but I had some people with me in my group that weren't getting, like Karen said, weren't getting paid, but we would try to respond to those expressed needs and immediately, as fast as we could, so that they saw that we were trying to deliver something that was important to them. We created teaching circles. They had been going on a little bit before I started my position, but we were able to broaden them. And again, you pay people a little stipend. And so we had to get approval to, increase that budget, not by a whole lot of money, but it all matters. And the teaching circles really were a hook, because it caused people from different disciplines to sit in the same group and talk about teaching and learning. These were sort of wildly popular. Everybody wanted to be in a teaching circle because that people got so energized. And in higher education, we tend to be very separated into our disciplines. We may not ever run into anybody, or get to know anybody in another subject area. And this just blew that up. And I think that it continues at my college to have people do that even years later. And then the last thing I'll say is that the things that led to me doing more individual peer-to-peer consulting made a huge difference, even if it wasn't for hundreds of people. It helped a lot of new faculty get their feet on the ground. It helped people who are struggling with something in particular. And so it did, I felt like that made a big difference. And certainly their comments back to me indicated that that mattered a lot to them. And so once you have some of these, the teaching circle participants, the people that I had personally done some work with, and then you have some big event, all those people are right in your corner right away. And so there's momentum, and they get other people to get excited. So you have to do some things, I think, at the beginning to build a little base, so that you've got people talking about faculty development across the curriculum, and that gets some kind of more excitement. Because we too, like Karen and Stewart have said, we would have a faculty development day at the beginning of the semester, and 2/3 of the faculty might not even show up. They'd take a personal day instead of showing up for it. And that's really too bad. You don't really build a nice base of involved and engaged faculty if they don't come. So by doing that small stuff, I think it gets to that momentum where you start to get bigger stuff happening. And that's what made the most difference.
It really gave you that chance, especially with the peer counseling. And I know doing was it the 5-on-5s or something that way, where we're working with faculty, getting them some feedback from their students in a very non-threatening manner. I think what was really nice about that is you built those personal relationships with people, and they're willing to come back to you the next time, which is fantastic.
And not in a non-threatening kind of situation.
Exactly. I mean, you have a professional friendship that's developed, and they trust you. And I think that trust becomes extremely important, because nobody likes to say they're not good at something and I need help. And faculty appreciate that help, especially when they feel as though it's just between you and them. And I think that's really great. All right, Stewart, you're at a big university. Like I said, you've got a lot of people all over the place coming and going, morning, noon, and night. And what did you do that got faculty interested?
Well, again, we had a bit of an advantage in that there were 600 full-time faculty, not to mention part-time faculty. The reason that's an advantage is in any group of people, there's early adopters, and they're easy. I'm an early adopter. When you tell me there's something I can go to, I go, even if I don't even know if it's going to be quality, because I'm excited to learn. So we had a number of those people that immediately wanted to be a part of something. And a lot of people told us nobody would care about faculty development, but that was ridiculous. That was based on the fact that we didn't have any faculty development for so many years. we realized early on also that an extrinsic motivation that would be huge at the university would be promotion tenure. Especially at that particular time, faculty were trying to find ways to be promoted and to get tenure because that meant more money. And of course, tenure meant you would be there for life. I don't know if this is still possible in this day and age, but back in the early 2000s, that was very important. So that's one reason we designed these certificate programs. Not only were they going to learn a lot and we wanted them to be excited about teaching, but they would have something to show their dean. And then we worked very hard. And I spent a lot of time with the 7 different deans, taking them to lunch, getting to be their friends. You can't dismiss how important it is to be friends with people in high places with these kinds of jobs. And I found that the deans would start to contact people at the beginning of the year when people would come in to design their program for tenure and promotion. They'd say, well, have you heard about the Center for Teaching and Learning? Have you thought about taking a certificate program? Have you thought about this and that? Well, immediately the phone would ring off the hook. They'd say, my dean asked me to call you. And if we could supply something that was exciting and highly motivated intrinsically, we had it made. We figured that because of the help that we were getting with the deans that were helping their faculty learn more about teaching and learning. And the other thing that all of you will understand, a lot of faculty didn't know how to teach. They had doctorates and they were experts in their field, but they had no experience. Some of them had never even taught at a public school, and many of them hadn't yet taught at a university. So they were looking for ways to go into a classroom and find a different approach than just lecturing and giving exams all the time. And so the 2 other programs I just very quickly mentioned, we started a SCOTS program, SCOTS, which we designed off of Brigham Young with a friend that I had there. It's called Students Consulting on Teaching. And this was incredible because we got a group of students, we showed them how they could help faculty, and they went into the classroom and they went to class early. They talked to the students, they talked to the faculty member, they asked the faculty member what they wanted to know. And they sometimes found out very profound things for the class. Sometimes it was very simple. They would tell the faculty member, you stood in front of the PowerPoint the whole time, nobody could read it. And the faculty member said, oh my goodness. Or they would say, you kept talking about your Uncle Harold in your lecture, and some of the students think they're getting very bored hearing about your Uncle Harold. And they were shocked at what they were learning from this student who had some abilities in this. And of course, they were giving them compliments also, but they were also writing up reports of what they heard from the students when they talked to the students. At the same time, we went the other direction. We started a peer faculty consultation group where we handpicked some faculty that wanted to be a part of this, and they became faculty who went into the classroom and watched the classroom, talked to the faculty member ahead of time, and tried to give them some advice based on what they were seeing. And they would talk to the students afterwards also. So we had 2 different groups. We had the students who were learning how to go in and help faculty, and we had the faculty who were going in as peers helping the faculty. And we were getting big numbers because they knew that the deans would be excited to see that they had done one or both of these as on their way to promotion and tenure.
All right, that is great. Thanks. Karen, you have a little different situation than the other 2 folks here, and that is you had 2 campuses that were part of your technical college. So what are some of the things that you all did to get people involved on each campus or for those duty days where everybody was together?
Well, with the 2 campuses, and I'm always on one campus, I had to get somebody that would step up on the other campus to at least be the voice for that campus, spearhead things, make sure flyers got posted for events, those types of things. So once I could convince someone to do it for a year, and it was every year trying to convince some other faculty at the other campus to do it. But once we got that, I think we really got the buy-in when we started doing surveys, asking faculty what they wanted. And not only did we ask and not do anything, we did what we could about it. So depending on, and they were anonymous, if they chose to be, they could put their name if they wanted. If they put something down and they put their name and they were the only one that put it, then I would reach out to them individually. And like Linda said, help them on a one-on-one basis. But if it was something that quite a few people wanted to, like the best way to write a test or how to grade, or, you know, just some teaching thing, then we'd pull in an expert on it and have a session on it, invite everyone. People really responded to that kind of just-in-time learning on what they wanted to know, not on what we thought they wanted to know or needed to know, but on what they knew. And a lot of it was things like cheating, grading, things that had to do with more maybe classroom management, that even though they'd taken several education courses, they didn't have even the students that, even the faculty that had a lot of experience, still there were things they didn't know. And this really was a game changer, I think, is that we started then asking them in the spring what things they could think about for next year. And then we'd kind of tentatively plan for the next year. And then in the fall, when they came back, we'd ask them again, now, are there things that, you know, maybe you didn't think of last spring that you want us? So we had monthly events. When we had a lot of things, we had weekly events. And like Linda said, we first tried them too on our college day, which was Wednesday, but we did it the hour before the college hour, the hour that most of the people took lunch, because during the college hour, everybody did meetings and things that was the only time they knew all faculty could get together. So we did it during the lunch hour, and those that wanted to, like I said, came, and it was just a learning experience for everyone. And we didn't, in those days, we did them across the campus. So depending on what campus you were on, we didn't have things like Zoom yet. So we had to do it with older systems that weren't as dependable, and they didn't record. So if you missed it, you were out of luck, type of thing. But, you know, it was a way to start, and it worked very, very well. And then the topics that got a lot of interest, or people said they couldn't come at that time, we try to work them into a workshop day, a professional development day, or some other time when we knew that they would be able to come, because everybody's on a different schedule, especially at a technical college. I'd say the majority of our classes are older students, and they're there from 2 in the afternoon till 10 at night. So it's quite a different than many of the other colleges. So we had to accommodate that, because we had so many part-time faculty that we started doing things later in the day, like from 4 to 5. So the part-time evening people could come in if they chose to, and many of them did. We started involving all of our, what we called adjunct. They weren't even part-time. They just they taught a course here and there. They were called adjunct, and we'd invite them to things. And sometimes they would be so appreciative to be a part of the community, to be learning that they hadn't been involved at before. So things like that. And the other thing we did was, when we were funded by the state, we used that money, I think, very wisely. And the state gave us some good professional development books, but with 2 campuses, we needed 2 sets of everything. So we used some of our money to duplicate it. So we had 2 sets. We got bookcases, rolling bookcases from the library. And we had areas in the college, about 5 areas on each campus, where all the faculty offices were. And this rolling bookcase with professional development books would be moved on almost a weekly basis, so that it was right there in front of faculty. They didn't have to go somewhere, because we kept it in our professional development center, and not a lot of people chose to come down there. We were way far away from everybody else. And but when we put it right in their area where they were at their desk and in their office, they would check out books. And they love this. They love not having to spend money on a book. This was especially as more and more faculty were kind of thinking about going online, but they wanted to read about it and see, you know, what all was involved. And this was a very helpful way too. Even before the faculty wanted to sit and talk to someone about it, because we always said, well, come and talk to us. But sometimes they just wanted to kind of read someone, you know, what the pros and cons were. And so those are some of the ways we got faculty interested at a technical college.
All right, that is great. Stewart, I'm going to start with you, but I think you're going to need to unmute yourself, because I know when you were coughing there, I have muted you. You might need to unmute yourself. If you go
Okay,
to
I'm on.
All right, so let's take a look at sort of the what impact did you see? What did you start to do? I know, Stewart, when you were talking about that, you know, you started to see that with time, more and more of your faculty were getting involved. And so what were some of the other kinds of ways that you saw impact on teaching and learning at Mankato State University, or Minnesota State, Mankato.
Yeah, my favorite one story is we would have many certificate program sessions with different groups of faculty that would stay together throughout the year. I'll never forget one day I was in the room a little early getting ready, and a young faculty member came in and she said, "Well, this is weird." I said, "Well, what's weird?" "Well, I just ran into an older faculty member in the hallway." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to my session with the Center for..." He said, "Well, why would you go there?" And she said, "What do you mean? We're doing exciting stuff. I'm learning new ways of helping my students." And she said the guy just did a 180 and puffed off down the hallway. There were many faculty like that when we came with this center, as you can imagine. I had one faculty member in psychology come up to me and say, "Stewart, why are you doing this? Either you're a good teacher or you're not. There's nothing you can do to help anybody. Either they're good or they're not." So I knew that we had many faculty that were not going to do anything. So we made a conscious decision with the provost. We would not bother these people. And I think this is a mistake that too many people make. They want everybody to be involved. And those terrible, whiny troublemakers, they work so hard to get them involved. Well, when you have 600 faculty members and there's one of you, that's a pretty stupid thing to do, don't you think, to work on people that don't really want to be a part of this? So what we did is we turned the Titanic, so to speak, maybe that's a bad boat. We turned the battleship so that we got all these new faculty coming that got excited, they got to meet each other, they had lunches and so on. Then we started those other programs where other faculty were getting involved. And soon we have so many faculty that were excited to learn about teaching and learning. Then we would bring in somebody like Dee Fink or Zala Fashant to do a presentation, and we would get big numbers. We would have never gotten big numbers. I agree with what the others have been saying. When you try to do it at a time that the university sets for something, forget about it. No one will come, it seems. But when you have people motivated intrinsically at that point, and they find out there's something more that they can learn about, they're there. And of course, you give them a book or something. We had a lot of free lunches, to be honest, and I think that is good because people were talking to each other. But what we did is we sort of walled in all of these terrible naysayers. There had to be at least 100 of them that could have crippled us had they been allowed to run the show. And we also got the deans involved. And of course, the certificate programs at the end of the year, we would meet in the ballroom with 100 some faculty. We had a beautiful lunch, and the provost would get up and talk about the program. And then we would have one faculty member we'd select that did a great final project. The president was there. And then they would give, each person would come up, and we would even play music at, da da dee 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 dee, which was a joke because I was a band director before I did this. And they would get their certificate. Oh, and they had some of their family in the ballroom. And then they would want a photo with the president with their certificate. And ultimately, they were going to go back to their dean and hand the dean the certificate and say, "Look what I did on my way to promotion and tenure." But I think after a few years, they forgot about promotion and tenure, and they just wanted to be a part of these different programs because of the value of the programs. And the bottom line is kind of ironic. After my 10 years, they called me in and said, "We're building a brand new Center for Teaching and Learning in the new part of the library for $250,000. I was just in a little office at that time. And of course, I was on my way out. So I left this gorgeous, I think Zala, you've seen this citadel in the lower level of our library at Minnesota State. It's gorgeous with furniture and rooms, things I would have wondered what to do with when I was doing my 10 years out of my little office. But it turns out that it's hard to get faculty to come to the library sometimes. So I'm not sure it was always the best thing, but it was like an award for the 10 years of work that we had done and all the faculty involved to have this beautiful new Center for Teaching and Learning. It is very beautiful. I just hope that they're still doing the kind of programs that we were doing back in the day, as they say.
Yeah,
I think I have the perspective because I've seen what all of you have worked in over the years, and you had little niches that were carved out of corner places, someplace that didn't apparently need to be used for something else. Consequently, let's put a Center for Teaching and Learning there. So I know that you did a lot with very little to office space, but I know that you all created fantastic opportunities. One of the things I wanted to kind of mention too is that it kind of goes back to some of the big ideas or whatever it was, is that when I first started doing faculty development at the system office, we put on these big, wonderful productions, sometimes a Saturday out at a campus, and we'd invite everyone from the system to come on over and everything that way. And we would do these and we'd bring in some national speaker, and it was fantastic. And 40 people would be there, and it would be a really great experiences for those 40 people. However, there were 10,000 people that worked in the Minnesota State colleges and university system as faculty. And so one of the things that I thought was incredibly important was start to record these sessions, because they're not going to always happen. A certificate program happens from year to year. Sometimes some of the programs that Linda had at Minneapolis, were yearly programs that you would begin to do it. New faculty would come in. You would always do that in the personal basis. Karen, the same way at Hennepin Tech. But one of the things I thought about is that, frankly, we had this great experience, but only those 40 people who were able to make it that day got to experience it. So I know that recording these, so they weren't sort of one and done experiences and then forgotten about. You at least had the opportunity to archive them. And by the time I left faculty development and went on to becoming a dean, one of the things that I saw happening is that we had actually 80 webinars that were created by faculty, by national speakers, and those were recorded and archived in a system-wide kind of library. So that is kind of really important to keep that going. And so don't just, you spend a lot of time, like Linda mentioned, putting together something and 2 people show up. Well, there might be 2 other people next week that need it, or next semester that need it. So don't redo that, and don't put in extra effort to redo it. You've got it already recorded that way. So technology was our friend in that case. Karen, what impact did you notice at Hennepin Tech?
Well, at a 2-year college, faculty don't have a reason to look good or be better. There is no tenure. There's no, they're not going to be called a different name. They're just all faculty. Okay. Once you get off your initial probation, that's what there is. Okay. So there's not a lot of incentive, money wise or career wise or anything. But what we found out was that nobody ever thanked faculty either for their work. So when the state of Minnesota started doing a teaching award annually, we offered faculty help. And I offered faculty, I should say. Nobody else would agree to help. But so I would help faculty sit down and come up with their teaching philosophy and come up with their portfolio they needed to be put forth in this pool. And the first year, I don't think we had a winner, but the second or third year we did. And then every couple of years we had another winner. So it boosted the morale at a 2-year technical college that, we can compete with the 2-year community college and the 4-year state universities, because we are all doing the same types of jobs, and so we then had faculty that went on and went to the national level. And so this was very exciting. No one in the history that, our school has been around 50 years now, and no one in the history had ever gone to a national level. They hadn't even gone to state levels before of teaching excellence. So this made everybody feel good. Now, of course, not everybody can get to that point because somebody has to nominate you, but we then encouraged people that wanted to do this to learn more about Quality Matters. We paid for them to go through it. We asked them to talk to their peers. We tried to get at least, the early adapters, like Stewart said, those are fun. Those are easy to get in to do new things. The naysayers, you're right. You kind of just leave them alone, let them follow if they wish. But I would just ask their people in their department or their program to say, tell your other faculty what you're doing. If they want more, send them our way. If not, at least say no. And little by little, without kicking and screaming, we would bring more people in. So it was more word of mouth, like I said, very grassroots, but as people came and they'd go through Quality Matters, we'd do an internal review first at our campus, and then we'd let them go for the national. And if they did get certified, we made a big deal out of it. They got put on the webpage. They got presented an award from the president. They got, they got put in the newsletter. So we made a really big deal out of what may be a small thing, but like I said, in technical college, these things aren't. Student achievements are rewarded and talked about. Faculty awards and nominations and things just really weren't. It just wasn't the culture. It never had been. So we changed that. And I think that really helped because people saw that, there's a lot of things that anybody can learn more and more. So to me, that's what I got the most out of it, is we were there to help. We had faculty that they'd have, same as a community college, the same rights to go on sabbatical, but they'd never done it. They didn't know how to go through, how to fill out the application, what they had to do. So several of us offered to help them. I had been on a sabbatical, so I would help them sit down and fill out their form. Then we started having technical college going sabbaticals. Our gen ed faculty knew more. Some of them had taught at other schools. They would go on sabbaticals. Technical college faculty always worried about their students and their programs and who was going to cover for them, whether they took 1 or 2 semesters. 1 semester for like myself was much easier than taking a whole year and worrying about your program, having, coming back and not having any students for the next year. But so little differences, like Linda said, little differences, they might be big thing in the scheme of things. We didn't have a big center. The office they gave me was in the far end of the school, and it was really like a closet. Faculty didn't want to walk down there. And so I kept supplies and things down there, but faculty rather just come to my little area and talk, or we'd meet in a lunchroom somewhere or a break room. They, sitting in a closet with somebody is not real conducive to showing support, So anyway, the little things I think all added up, and that's what I say, just, get some early adapters, get them hooked in, see if you can turn them into being active in your group or peer mentors or whatever, get them to talk in their areas and disciplines or programs to other faculty, because I can't go around. I had a full load, no release time. I had a full load. I didn't have time to go around and talk to everybody. And we had 2 campuses. That in alone was, it was a 30-minute drive to the other campus. So it wasn't like, I could do it because I had classes to teach. So we had some unique situations too, but like I said, getting somebody on the other campus to sort of, even if we had to spearhead everything and just gave them things to do and, rooms to set up and stuff like that, it really helps having somebody locally on that campus that could help us carry out even our broadcast events.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating in this. And I think we have a lot of, when I look at this, we have well over 75 years of faculty development right here, a lot of different experiences at many different levels. And one of the things that I think is really a common thread was, I think back to the Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, sometimes in faculty development, they don't come. And so I think it's when they're ready, they will come is probably a much better slogan for that. But I'm just going to leave this open at this point. And anybody that has any sort of closing thoughts or comments about what you heard today, about your work in faculty development, go ahead and feel free to chime in.
I wanted to mention, I'm sorry, I'll quickly go and I'll be done. I got a phone call one day in the middle of my tenure. Faculty was very excited. He's gone to programs. He's all turned on by teaching, learning. I was all excited to hear this. And then he said something that was very disturbing. He said, Stewart, where can I get money from your center to go to a teaching, learning workshop or conference? And I was stunned because we're unionized at Minnesota State and they all got a decent amount of money. And especially, as was explained earlier, they could put money together from the department. Some could get as much as $1,000 to go somewhere, which wasn't a small amount of money back at that time. And I said to the person, well, where are you going now? Well, I go to my chemistry. I go see all my friends when I went to college, and I go to my chemistry thing, chemistry this, I said, well, don't you think you could go to a teaching learning workshop that would be in general and maybe give you some, and there was this 10 seconds of silence. And this faculty member said, wow, I never realized I'm in a rut. I keep going to the same conferences, the same workshops with the same people there. He said, give me a list and I'm going to go somewhere else. Of course, we invented a list that we gave to all of the people in the program. And of course, I got a wonderful call many months later that he took his money and he went to some, I don't remember what it was now, but he was so excited to meet other faculty that were dealing with the same issues in teaching and learning. And he came out with so many new ideas that he wouldn't have gotten at his chemistry forum. So my last suggestion to people that are dealing with this is please remember that you need to reinvent people sometimes. We get into ruts that we cannot get out of. And I was the same at first in music. I went to all the music things. Then I realized, well, teaching and learning isn't just about music, is it? There are a lot of commonalities. And that's when I got involved with the state system, which got me into faculty development, actually. So I think we all have little stories like that to share that we're shocked, and yet we shouldn't be shocked that that's how people think.
Thanks. Linda, why don't you go ahead?
Well, yeah, you know, I think that a common theme, but in higher education, it can be very isolating. You know, whether even within your own department, it's possible that maybe you're the only person who teaches a particular thing, and you don't really have colleagues on your campus to discuss curriculum, or, oh, my students aren't understanding this or that or whatever. And so by being able to cross-pollinate, if you will, and start talking about the common thing that all of us in faculty in higher ed have, is that we teach people, rather than focusing on the discipline only, gives you some common ground, and it starts to help people value that more, because the truth is in higher ed that your ability to teach isn't valued as much as your expertise in a field. I think that's true in a technical school. You know, you're program specific, you're an expert in a particular area, all the way to a university type setting. And so when you start to value the actual teaching and learning process, the whole thing becomes a whole lot more enjoyable and a whole lot less isolating. And you start to feel energized about a different aspect of your work. And all of us in a career need to feel energized and positive about the work. And so frequently, some of those naysayers, if things don't go well, they blame the students. Oh, well, students don't do this and they don't do that, or, you know, students aren't like they used to be, or whatever. This really turns the tables on that and has people saying, what can I do better to help my students learn? It's less, it isn't as, it's sort of conflict laden, and it makes people happy and feels, and then in my school, it allowed people to feel more like they were part of a community, and we all need that. We need to feel like we really have colleagues, and so it brought people together. And those are, you know, learning has an affective side that we sometimes don't think about. And this is kind of that same thing. When we're happier about things because we can get support and so forth, that's really important to our success.
Great, thank you. Karen, any closing comments?
Sure. Whenever somebody was going to a conference or seminar or whatever, I would say, why don't you invite a colleague? You know, you get a lot of it, even if they're not in your own discipline. It's still good to go somewhere with somebody. You can, you know, share on the ride there or the airplane ride there. You can perhaps share a room, whatever you're comfortable with. But it's someone to talk to, someone to have meals with, to talk to. And that worked really well because other people hadn't thought about things. Although professional development, myself, we'd look up every conference we could think of on anything to do with teaching, learning, assessment, and publish this so that people would know things that were coming up, where they were. Some, you know, now in the last few years, now there's been a lot of virtual ones that the cost is minimal, and sometimes free. So there's lots of opportunity, but people don't tend to spend the time to seek out that information. If you make it available for them, a lot more we're taking advantage of it. So like I said, you know, invite someone to go with you, keep a list of this, make sure that your faculty know what's out there over and above their own disciplines, because yes, like Stewart said, faculty get in a rut. They think if they're in English, they have to always go to English. They're in math, they have to always go to math. People would flat say to me, why are you going to a teaching conference? You're in IT, don't you need to go to IT? So like I said, no, I know my content. I need to know how to be a better teacher. And it was eye-opening. They just said, what are you talking about? You know? So, you know, if you get past some of those hurdles, I think you can make a tremendous difference at any college, especially in higher ed.
That's great. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time. And those of you who are watching, appreciate that. I think you've got some great tips, and we have a lot of challenges before us, as we know that students are learning in a wide variety of ways right now. And we have faculty who need to learn about how students are learning in a wide variety of ways and bring that into the classroom and make it truly engaging and exciting for students. So thanks, everybody. And wish you the very best of luck in your own faculty development. Thanks.